It had jaws like a guillotine, armor like a tank, and a hunger that stopped for nothing. 400 million years ago, it dominated the oceans. It was the top predator, the undisputed king of its world. And yet, it vanished. No descendants, no second chance. What could erase a killing machine like this? Not a stronger enemy, but time and change. This is the story of Dunkleosteus, the apex predator that evolution abandoned. Dunkleosteus lived during the Late Devonian period, roughly 380 to 360 million years ago, in a world where land was still mostly barren, and the ocean was the true kingdom of life. But Dunkleosteus didn't just live in that kingdom, it ruled it. This monstrous fish grew up to 10 meters long, about the length of a school bus, and it could weigh up to 4 tons. But it wasn't just size that made it deadly. It wore armor, not metaphorical armor, actual bony plates covering its skull and front half like a natural helmet, a prehistoric tank that swam. And then there were the jaws. Dunkleosteus had no teeth in the modern sense. Instead, its skull was fused with bone-cutting jaw plates, massive shearing blades that self-sharpened every time it bit down, a skull built to slice. And when it bit, it didn't nibble. Modern simulations estimate that Dunkleosteus could exert a bite force of 6,000 to 7,000 newtons. That's more powerful than a great white shark, more than a saltwater crocodile, and even more than a Tyrannosaurus rex in some parts of the jaw. Compared to a human, we barely reach 700 newtons, and it didn't take long to deliver that bite. Dunkleosteus could open and close its mouth in just 20 milliseconds. That's faster than you can blink. So imagine this. You're a Devonian fish. You think you're safe in the shallow reef waters. You never see it coming. One flash, your armored body is split in two. Welcome to the age of monsters. It's not enough to be big. Plenty of large creatures don't dominate. What made Dunkleosteus truly terrifying was the combination. Heavily armored head and chest made it almost impossible to injure. Shearing jaw plates that could slice through the exoskeletons of other armored fish. And a shock and awe feeding strike. One of the fastest and most powerful bites in vertebrate history. It was an apex predator, the very top of the food chain. Nothing hunted Dunkleosteus, not even other Dunkleosteus. Well, maybe occasionally. There is some evidence of cannibalism. Its diet? Anything it wanted? Soft-bodied prey. Devoured, hard-shelled armored fish. Cracked open like peanuts. Dead animals? Why not? It was probably also a scavenger. In many ways, Dunkleosteus was the final form of a successful lineage called placoderms, early jawed fishes that evolved powerful armor and efficient feeding. It didn't just survive in its world, it dominated it. But then, it was gone. The Devonian period is often called the Age of Fishes. Oceans were full of biodiversity, and placoderms like Dunkleosteus ruled the seas. But then, the world changed. Roughly 372 million years ago, Earth experienced one of the planet's 5 major mass extinctions, the Late Devonian extinction. It didn't hit like a meteor. It was slower, more drawn out, and more complex. The oceans, once rich with oxygen and prey, began to suffocate. Massive algae blooms, possibly triggered by plant expansion on land, may have caused anoxic zones, areas with little to no oxygen. Reefs collapsed. Large prey animals declined. Food chains crumbled. For a creature like Dunkleosteus, that was a death sentence. It was huge, armored, and needed lots of energy to survive. But in the new, degraded oceans, energy was in short supply. Dunkleosteus was built for dominance, not for scarcity. And so, as its food sources dwindled and its ecological niche vanished, so did it. Not just Dunkleosteus, but almost all placoderms wiped away. Not because they were weak, but because they couldn't change. Evolution doesn't reward strength, it rewards flexibility. And Dunkleosteus? It wasn't flexible. While it ruled the Devonian seas, another lineage was quietly rising. Not as strong, not as armored, not even as large, but faster, lighter, more adaptable. The sharks. Early sharks like Cladosolech or Ctenacanthus were slender, unarmored, and not nearly as terrifying as Dunkleosteus. But they had something he didn't. They could move fast, reproduce quickly, adapt to changing environments, and most importantly, they could survive when the world shifted. Dunkleosteus, with its heavy armor and energy demands, was a relic of a world that no longer existed. Its design, once perfect, had become a liability. It was overbuilt, too good for its time, and when the extinction came, it had nowhere to go, no way to evolve, no offspring to carry its legacy. It wasn't hunted to death. It wasn't outcompeted. It was abandoned by evolution. But what if it hadn't been? Let's imagine a world where Dunkleosteus survived the Late Devonian extinction. A world where it continued evolving, adapting, thriving. By the Carboniferous period, the oceans were changing again. New species, new prey, new predators. What would Dunkleosteus become in that world? A deeper diving predator with refined sensory systems? A faster, sleeker version, trading some armor for speed? A species capable of birthing live young like some modern sharks? Maybe it would have pushed sharks out of the apex role entirely. Maybe even today, we'd be watching armored juggernauts hunt the deep. A modern sea with armored titans instead of sleek sharks. It could have evolved specialized hunting tactics, perhaps using ambush strategies in coral thickets, or using low-light vision to dominate in the depths. Maybe a descendant of Dunkleosteus would develop electroreception, like modern-day sharks, enhancing its deadly accuracy even more. Imagine it in icy polar waters, turned pale and sluggish, stalking through silty darkness with patience learned through ages. Or perhaps in volcanic vents, armoring itself even further with mineral coatings, transforming into a living tank resistant to pressures modern fish couldn't withstand. A future Dunkleosteus could have become a deep-sea legend, an elusive titan glimpsed only in the abyssal plains. But that's not the world we got. The line ended. Dunkleosteus remained a fossil, a symbol of what might have been. Its extinction wasn't just a tragedy. It was a lesson that nature doesn't care about strength alone. It favors balance, efficiency, flexibility. Dunkleosteus was designed to kill, but not to adapt. It was the ultimate predator of its time. But time moved on, and it didn't. In the grand story of life, it's not the strongest who win. It's the ones who can change. So remember this. Evolution isn't fair. It's not poetic. It's not impressed by power. It's about survival. And Dunkleosteus? It was too perfect to survive. A masterpiece of destruction, erased by its own excellence. A ghost in the fossil record. A king without a kingdom. A god of war in a world that stopped needing gods. Too good for its time. Too rigid for the future. Just one of many forgotten champions. In nature's great pantheon of failure. But even in extinction, Dunkleosteus leaves behind a question. What is true power, force, or foresight? It dominated through brute strength, but lacked the adaptability that evolution demands. And perhaps that's the irony, that the most powerful creature of its time was powerless against time itself. Its fossilized remains remind us that even the most invincible predators are only as strong as the world allows them to be. A slight shift in climate, a disruption in oxygen, a collapse of prey populations, that's all it takes to erase a giant. So the next time you hear the phrase, survival of the fittest, remember Dunkleosteus, because the fittest isn't always the fiercest. Sometimes it's the most flexible, the most adaptable, the most invisible. And sometimes extinction doesn't mean failure. It means that the rules changed and the old champions didn't get the memo. Dunkleosteus was a god of the ancient oceans, but gods are only gods as long as their world worships them. Once that world faded, it was just another skeleton on the ocean floor, a final lesson carved in bone. Dominate, and you'll rule for a moment. Adapt, and you'll survive for an age. And in that silent grave beneath ancient waves, Dunkleosteus whispers to us still, not as a roar, but as a warning. And in that silent grave beneath ancient waves, Dunkleosteus whispers to us still, not as a roar, but as a warning. But what else can Dunkleosteus teach us? Its extinction wasn't just a biological hiccup, it was a turning point in Earth's history. A shift from one evolutionary model to another, from brute force to strategic survival. Let's zoom out. At its peak, Dunkleosteus wasn't just a predator. It was a phenomenon. Fossils of its armored plates have been found across multiple continents: North America, Europe, Africa. This wide distribution hints at a once thriving, successful genus. Imagine the Devonian oceans, clear, teeming with trilobites, ammonites, early sharks, and massive armored fish like Bothriollepis. Coral reefs that stretched for miles, primitive but vibrant. Dunkleosteus swam through these waters like a leviathan, scattering schools of smaller fish with every stroke of its tail. It didn't just rule by strength, it ruled by fear. There's evidence that prey animals began evolving flatter bodies and better camouflage, perhaps in response to predators like Dunkleosteus. It was an evolutionary arms race, one driven by jaws of bone. But for all its dominance, Dunkleosteus had limitations. Its tail was likely more rigid than that of modern, fast-swimming fish, making it less maneuverable. Its armor, while protective, made it slower. It was the medieval knight of the ocean, powerful, honorable in design, and tragically unfit for the coming age of mobility. In the Carboniferous and Permian periods that followed, the marine world changed drastically. Ammonites diversified. Fish became sleeker. Reptiles began their march toward land and sky. Had Dunkleosteus survived, it would have faced competition not just from sharks, but from marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs, mosasaurs, and eventually even early whales. Would it have kept up? Maybe. Maybe not. But what if we go further? Let's push past even imagination into alternative timelines. In one timeline, Dunkleosteus evolves into a semi-terrestrial creature. Its armored front half becomes a weight-bearing frame. It begins to lurk in the shallows, lunging at creatures emerging from the water's edge, a prehistoric crocodile analog. In another, it becomes a filter feeder, downsizing its bite force, shedding armor, and sifting small prey from plankton-rich waters, like an armored whale shark hybrid. In a third, it becomes social, hunting in packs, coordinating attacks with others of its kind. A tactical predator rather than a solo brute. The possibilities are endless, but in every scenario, it would need to do one thing: change. The fossil record is filled with creatures that failed to adapt. The trilobites, once the rulers of the Paleozoic, vanished. The ammonites, brilliant and diverse, gone. The non-avian dinosaurs, reduced to bones and questions. Dunkleosteus joins them not as a fluke, but as a symbol. A reminder that evolution doesn't write poetry. It doesn't create heroes. It doesn't care who the strongest was. It only cares who's left. And so, Dunkleosteus remains in stone. Not swimming, not hunting, but teaching. A relic from a time when power seemed eternal, until the currents of change swept it all away. So here's the final irony. In a world where survival is everything, the most terrifying predator of the Devonian was just a temporary solution. And its lesson? Be adaptable. Be aware. Because dominance fades, but those who shift endure. That's what sharks did. That's what mammals did. That's what our own ancestors did. Dunkleosteus didn't. And that's why you know its name only through the rocks. Through reconstructed skulls in museums, through documentaries and speculation, through silence. But even silence can echo. And from the depths of time, Dunkleosteus echoes this. I was the strongest once, but the sea forgot me. Learn from that. And maybe, just maybe, we will. Because this isn't just a story about a fish. It's about a pattern. Throughout Earth's history, the same narrative plays out. Something rises, dominates, refuses to adapt, and falls. It's not just biological. It's civilizational. Empires, economies, ideas, all follow the same curve. In Dunkleosteus, we don't just see the fall of a predator. We see a warning for ourselves. For as climate shifts again, as oceans warm, as ecosystems teeter on the brink, we too stand at a threshold. Will we adapt, or become the fossils of tomorrow? Because if evolution has a voice, it speaks not through victories, but through the silence of what came before. And if we listen, truly listen, to the bones beneath our feet, to the extinct giants carved into stone, we might just realize. Survival isn't guaranteed, not for titans, not for thinkers, not even for us, unless we learn to evolve. So perhaps the final message of Dunkleosteus is not just one of biological loss, but of cultural significance. A fossilized mirror held up to our own time. A challenge not to repeat the fate of creatures that once thought themselves unshakable. Its skull, with shearing blades where teeth should be, is now a museum piece, but also a question. What do we value? Power or resilience? Strength or sustainability? Conquest or coexistence? In a world that prizes dominance, economic, technological, even ideological, Dunkleosteus asks us to reconsider, because it too dominated. And now it is gone. We may think of extinction as ancient history, but we are not immune to it. Species vanish every day, oceans acidify, coral reefs bleach, glaciers recede, and all the while we build more, consume more, accelerate faster. But faster isn't always forward. Bigger isn't always better. Sometimes the answer isn't to sharpen our blades, but to soften our grip, to adapt, to listen, to change. That's what nature rewards. That's what Dunkleosteus never did. And that's why its bones lie silent, but its message roars louder than ever. It reminds us that extinction doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it's a slow fade, unnoticed until it's irreversible. Just as Dunkleosteus once vanished from the oceans, species today are slipping into silence. Insects that pollinate, fungi that stabilize forests, corals that form the base of marine ecosystems. Each loss is a ripple, and ripples become waves. So when we speak of Dunkleosteus, we're not talking about a monster. We're talking about a mirror, a reflection of our own age and the choices we face. Will we continue on the path of dominance, or choose the harder road of adaptation? The Devonian seas have long dried up, but their lessons still flow. We just have to listen. The story of Dunkleosteus is more than a tale from deep time. It's a chronicle of transformation, a symbol of the relentless push and pull between life and environment, between being and becoming. It forces us to ask questions that echo across epochs. What does it truly mean to survive? Is survival about brute strength, or about flexibility, adaptation, and change? Dunkleosteus, with its armored carapace and guillotine jaws, was the epitome of evolutionary engineering, a perfect predator for its time. Yet perfection proved a trap. The very traits that made it a titan made it brittle in the face of change. Today, we see echoes of this dilemma in our own world. Our technologies, our systems, our societies often prize power and growth above all else. But growth without adaptability is fragile. The Dunkleosteus teaches us that resilience is often quiet, invisible, and slow. It is found not in dominance but in diversity, not in rigidity but in fluidity. Look to the natural world, the forests that endure fires by regenerating from seeds deep in the soil, the corals that slowly rebuild after bleaching events, the insects that pollinate and sustain life cycles. Their survival depends on being able to shift, to evolve, to persist through uncertainty. And yet, the modern age often overlooks these lessons. We impose monocultures on landscapes, prioritize short-term gains over long-term health, and accelerate changes faster than ecosystems can follow. Like Dunkleosteus, we may be magnificent. But magnificence alone does not guarantee survival. In this light, Dunkleosteus is a ghostly mentor, urging caution, humility, and respect for the intricate dance of life. Its fossilized remains, once the terrifying jaws of a supreme predator, now challenge us to reconsider our place in the world. Are we the masters of our fate, or merely participants in an ancient and ongoing story of adaptation and extinction? Its extinction was not just a loss of a species, it was a signpost pointing toward a new world, one where the rules had changed. The Devonian seas gave way to new forms, new strategies, new life. The question now is, what will the future seas, skies, and lands say about us? Will humanity be remembered as a force of destruction or as stewards of change? Will our legacy be of frozen monuments, relics of power long faded, or vibrant testimonies of resilience and renewal? The lesson from Dunkleosteus is clear. To endure is not to be the biggest or the strongest. It is to be the most adaptable, the most willing to change course when the currents shift. And in a world spinning faster every day, that lesson is more urgent than ever. Because extinction is never final until we forget its lessons. Dunkleosteus may rest silent beneath the stones, but its story speaks loudly to those who listen, about the delicate balance of life, the inevitability of change, and the enduring power of adaptability. Will we hear it? Will we learn? Only time will tell. But one thing remains certain. The seas remember.